Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Hey, I'm K.C.
And I'm Tyler.
And you're listening to
The Element Podcast.
Pretty as a sunset, you know what I'm thinking.
Hey, folks. Randy Newberg here.
Oh, you sound like you've been doing a little tag preparedness over there. Eh?
I've been having some preparedness and some refreshness, too. Well, your favorite Mexican food restaurant ever is where?
Eesh. I didn't know I was going to get put on the spot like this.
Yeah, that's what I do, man.
Maybe Del Rio, Texas.
Yeah.
Maybe Alvin, Texas. Hard to say.
What about Alvord? Alvoid, as they call it.
I have only eaten Taco Casa there.
So
if y'all
if y'all only knew what happened at the Taco Casa, we can't really say. Mm-hmm. But yeah, and prior to that, Taco Casa was real weird.
Yeah.
Weird things, man. My favorite Mexican food place, probably, I don't know. I like El Mono a lot.
I do too.
And I like that it's just minutes up the road.
It's consistent too.
Yeah, it's got this kind of like nostalgic home away from home.
One of my previous youth kids works there now too.
Really?
So we got the hookup.
All right,
yeah,
dude.
buddy.
Extra salsa.
That's right, man.
And
bring that good stuff.
You know what? We ate. Was it called Ojedas or something?
Oh yeah, it's good
in Canton. Had some good salsa there.
Yeah.
So if you have a Mexican food place that we should try out, you should definitely send us a message right now on Instagram.
That's right.
Put it in our DMs.
We should probably really keep up with that.
Yeah.
That way, when we're traveling the country, that somebody's like, over here in Louisville or wherever, this is where you probably want to go.
Especially if it's a Texas person that's mentioning that.
Yeah.
If it's a Kentucky person, you might be like, I don't know if they got a real good judge of what Mexican food is.
Yeah, this place over called Jalico's or something like that. It's pretty good, They bring you out, you actually get a big cup of salsa instead of the little one for
But just
everybody.
one per table.
That's right.
Dude, I think I've told this story before, probably on the podcast, but when Kaylee and I, we were in maybe just out of college, we went to Denver one day, and we were like, man, kind of hungry for some Mexican. We're young. We went to On the Border. We're like, that sounds good. And so we stop in. They hand us one bowl of salsa and a small thing of big chips, And before the waitress could come back with waters, we were done with that salsa. We're like, can we get a couple extra salsas? And she looked at us like we had four eyes, dude. We're just used to getting your own salsa and eating a bunch of it.
Man, some restaurants bring you the house salsa, one each, and then 3 of other types of salsa.
Yeah, like Chewy's.
Yeah.
Don't they do that?
Well, you get to kind of pick a couple or whatever at Chewy's if you want to. But I've been at some, traditional Mexican food places that are like that because they make like a Chipotle orange one, a green creamy, and then like a salsa verde or something like that.
Mm-hmm. That's like gorditas, man. They got that good green and that good red.
Oh, it's the good stuff. Guys, before we go too far off into La La Land, I want to tell you that we do have a guest today on the podcast. His name's Dudley Phelps. Dudley, Dud the Stud, Uncle Dud. Bud, all those things. We're going to have a good talk with Dudley today. He's with Native Nurseries. And, man, I can't tell you what we talk about because we talk about all good stuff when it comes to property management. There's a lot of tree stuff in there, of course.
It's just some bros chatting, about property management.
Yeah, we're relating it back to hunting, too. Dud's actually been hunting a lot of public land and enjoying that, so we talk about some of his takes on that stuff. So that'll happen here in a little bit on the podcast. But first, let me remind you.
Announcement time.
Be sure and message us at the good restaurants. That's actually what I care about right now. But no, we do have a couple things coming up that I want y'all to hang out with us to do. So the first one that is approaching, Tyler and I will be at National Wild Turkey Federation Convention for a few days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of those dates. But I'd imagine if you want to, we'll for sure be at the Cruiser booth, hanging out with Chad, testing new product, possibly.
I hope so.
Oh, that would be super exciting if that's the case. On Friday at 1:30 p.m. That's Friday the 18th, I think. We'll look it up
17th.
I thought we'd get there Thursday 17th.
That's the 18th, you're right.
Yeah,
Yep.
Friday the 18th. We'll be in Nashville at the Cruiser booth at 1:30 p.m. If you want to come by, say howdy. We'll bring a little Element merchandise, and who knows, if you're the first person to after 1:30, right, to be like, hey guys, I'm here, we might get you a little something.
But listen, let me just tell y'all, I ain't got no problem with a 4X guy, but I just don't have many 4X shirts. Okay?
That's right. You might have to get it special order later.
Yeah, that might be the way it is. I mean, if you say hi to us and you're a 4X, I'm probably not going to choose you for the shirt. Just saying. Or if you're small, because I don't have any small
That's
shirts
true.
either.
We don't order any smalls.
You got to be kind of in the. If you don't look like everybody else, I'm sorry. It's good for you to look different. It's good, I think.
Yeah.
But you just. We don't have many of those shirts.
That's right.
But we do have new shirts.
We do have new shirts. They're real cool.
Yeah, they say, make mechanicals great again. And it has the Element on it. It's got like a spaceship, rocket ship looking broadhead on it.
Yeah.
And
that is a mechanical.
they're cool. Red, white, and blue, and black shirt. They have been on pre-order previously, and now they are here. We're shipping them out today, the ones that have been pre-ordered. So thank you for that.
I got a bunch of packages here on the desk, so thank y'all for ordering stuff.
And if you haven't ordered, you can go to the website and you can order one. And we've got 2X, large, and medium shirts, I believe, is what we've got.
We don't have an XL?
In XL, yeah. That would be 4 sizes there.
That's right. Yeah. So and they look real cool. You can check them out on our website. Mm-hmm. So get you some of those. And you know what? That would be a cool thing to wear whenever you go and do some target shooting because it's kind of funny. It's a good, conversation starter. Yeah, man, I shoot fixed blades too. But you know what, man? People just go crazy about that stuff. You got to take it easy. That's what you can tell people.
Yep.
At least that's what I tell people.
Yeah.
Yeah. You, on the other hand, you're like, no, I'm serious about this, guys. 2024 MMGA.
That's it.
But
MMA.
That's it.
Yeah, so we can all wear them to a TAC event. How about?
That's right. Total Archery Challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Tyler and I are going to be at San Antonio and at Broken Bow, which they just announced that was going to be a thing just a few weeks ago, the Broken Bow one, which should be pretty fun. I'm kind of interested because the whole idea behind TAC is to make it challenging and kind of weird, I think. I've never been, but I've heard. Mm-hmm. It can also be like a kind of a bro fest if you don't watch out too. So we're not going to be.
This is negative context if you can't tell.
Don't expect us to show up just with our influencer outfit on, if you know what I'm saying. Might be looking kind of silly out there, if you know what I'm saying. I like to keep it fresh. So, anyways,
Pineapple Boy.
If you're going to be at either one of those events, be sure and find us and say howdy. We'd like to hang out and talk.
Did you say what time the cruiser booth deal was?
1:30 p.m.
1:30 p.m. on Friday. So right after lunch, which I'll be several hours after lunch for me probably. But y'all come on by and hang out with us. And you can try out some of the cruiser saddles if you haven't yet, and meet Chad. He's a good dude.
So at the tax stuff, we might be at a booth or two there. That's kind of undecided. Really don't like to have to go to booths too much, except for when it's Chad because he's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be fun. It's a good time of year to shoot your bow. We actually might have some new bows coming pretty soon, chest out and stuff.
Yep.
We'll let y'all know about that stuff. We shot those Elites last year, liked them a lot. There's a new Elite bow this year. We'll shoot a little bit too and see what we think about it. Got to see it the other day at least and touch it for a second. Didn't get to shoot it.
No.
Because Canton Archery Shop's closed. So
Come on, guys.
We
need y'all open on Mondays.
Yeah, for real. No, I know everybody needs rest, right? It's the Archery Sabbath is Monday.
That's right.
Yeah. West the rest of the weekend. West after the weekend. Yeah. Anyways, if you like our accent, you're going to love Dudley Phelps' accents because it's just like, imagine if you took the redneck and then like put a little butter on it.
Pour honey on it.
That's it, dude. Actually, honey's good because he's just south of Tupelo, right?
Yeah, Tupelo honey.
Yeah, dude.
Hummy.
Yeah.
I ate some hummy last night.
Yeah, we did. Yep, we'd celebrated Tyler's birthday with some Greek food.
Yeah.
Dude, here's an anomaly that I think is so cool. We live in Emory, Texas.
Yeah.
And we have got a
smorgasbord.
top tier Greek place though. Like it's good.
Yeah.
Real good Greek food in a town of 1,400 or 1,500 people. Yeah. It's pretty cool. And it's always busy.
I think it's like 1,200 on the sign, right?
Yeah,
but
probably.
It's definitely.
It's like Sulphur Springs has been 14551 for 30 years. Like, there ain't no way.
I don't know. I think you think you're living in the past a little bit there.
No, I'm saying it's not that. It's not that. That's what the sign says.
I think the sign says like 20.
Well, the one on 154 still says the 1414, whatever.
Does it?
Yeah.
Dang,
they ain't made it around there yet. You know how them city boys are.
They're taking their time. They're listening to this podcast, too. I promise you.
That's right.
Anyways. It's right, though. I mean, we're pretty much turning into Cal, Texas.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Love it. Well, let's talk to Dudley and see if we can figure out how to make our properties cooler so we don't have to leave them near as much.
All right, so now on the phone we got Dudley Phelps from Native Nurseries, Mossy Oaks Native Nurseries, that is. Stud.
Hey, guys. How are y'all doing?
What's happening, man? What are you up to?
Oh, I don't know it. Just hanging out at the office, helping people figure out what to order and what to plant, and talking about just all kinds of stuff lately.
Yeah. Big bucks involved in that conversation at all?
I hear about all these other people killing big bucks, but for me, it's walking 6 miles and getting within about 50 yards of the truck and looking up and seeing that spike running off that I jumped right by the truck after walking 6 miles.
Yeah.
That's kind of been my story.
You've been doing a little more public land stuff lately, then, huh?
It's funny. I've gotten pretty obsessed with it. I grew up doing the private thing and, parking and walking 200 yards and getting in the same stand you've hunted in 53 times before. And, I like trees. I like being outside. I like backpacking. I like boating, all that kind of stuff. And, I've just fallen into this public thing, but I really enjoy just making a big loop. I've been carrying my 22 lately during deer season and squirrel hunting, and doing a 5 or 6 mile loop on a Sunday afternoon, and it's more of a scout than a hunt. Mm-hmm. And
that's fun.
I almost want to do that for 3 or 4 years, and then log in a bunch of cool areas I found, and then start hunting hard.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, that is cool. We do some of that this time of year too. We actually take a shotgun with us, and depending on whether it's January or February, we got duck seasons that are open, squirrel, pinks, woodcock, hogs.
Rabbits.
There are rabbits. There are all kinds of things for us to shoot this time of year, and it's a good time of year because it's typically pretty cold where we're at in East Texas, and if you can walk around 55 degrees in a t-shirt and not be too hot, not be too cold, You know, I would rather walk when it's pretty cold as opposed to 60 plus. You know, because you start heating up real quick when you walking them 6 mile loops like you do. You know, so
I agree. As long as I have enough warm stuff on, I prefer the cold.
yeah.
Well, with your biologist brain, what are you seeing out there when you're making those loops that really piques your interests?
You know, as a lot of you know, not all of you, but I'm a tree goob. And so
You
I'm
avoided the
always
tree
looking
nut
for
thing there, didn't you? You wanted to say it.
tree nut, tree goob, you know, just different lingo.
A goob is actually a legume, actually.
That's true.
I'm always looking for that
Mesquites.
standout tree, you know. I can't help it. It's kind of like, you know, when the Terminator is looking out, or Iron Man, you see all this computerized stuff. Well, I can't go back by a tree without mentally identifying it. So I'm doing that kind of thing. But I'm scouting and walking, and I guess you can call it hunting, but walking fast and walking slow, maybe following a contour or following an aspect and a contour.
What's
that
an
kind of
aspect?
thing.
You kind of got me there. What's an aspect?
Well, like a north-facing slope.
Okay.
You know, that's an aspect. And just trying to find stuff that's repeatable. I'm new to this public thing. I've lived in this college town, Starkville, Mississippi, that's surrounded by lots of public land. And when I was a kid, we called it exploring, but I feel like that's what I'm doing a lot of now, and not focusing on the kill as much. I've got access to private where I can shoot a few does and fill my freezer. And so I'm just kind of new at the whole public thing.
How do you identify a tree this time of year that you, like, say you've come across a tree and you're like, man, I'm kind of confused about that. What are the things you're looking at to help you further identify? It's all about narrowing it down. What I'm not good at is using the dichotomous key, you know, where you flip through a book, it says, you know, does it have hairs on the underside of the leaf? And then if it does, you go to the next thing. If it doesn't, you go to 2B or whatever. That's never worked well with me. So I'm always looking for clues to narrow it down. So I usually go by sight first. So just say it's some kind of a red oak, but you're not sure. But it's on the top of a hill. You can narrow it down. And so that just removes all the bottomland oaks. And then, you can look at the bark. I even, you can get on your hands and knees and look at the ground for signs of, acorn caps. So even if the leaves aren't on the tree, you can look underneath and see what the dominant leaf is. What about
and that way you can?
What about smaller trees like plums and different cherries and stuff like that are kind of you don't have the leaves to look at or the fruits this time of year. Are you able to figure that out, or is that just something where you're like, I'm going to drop a pin on Onyx and do, put plum tree, because I know that, but I have to come back and look at that later.
Maybe a combination of the two. You figure out it's some kind of plum, or it's in that prunus genus, plum, cherry. It often has those lenticels, which are the little horizontal lines on the stem, and that it's in the related to a plum, but you can just look at the buds. I just kind of use a non-traditional method, I guess. I get to know the plants, and after a while, you can almost look at it just like I can recognize somebody without my glasses on by their mannerisms and things like that.
Yeah, sure.
Sometimes you can just see the way a plant carries itself. Are the limbs a little droopier? Is it sprouting from the base? Those kinds of things. You're just narrowing it down.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
That's worked well for me.
Yeah. How many times do you walk across an oak tree and say, this is not really a nameable variety because it's hybridized?
I'm always looking for them. Mm-hmm. And so But, you can walk for a whole day or a whole week in the woods and never find one. And then all of a sudden you'll find 3 in a day. It's weird how that works. I also like to, forage for mushrooms, chanterelles, morels, lion's manes, stuff like that. And it's the same thing. You'll walk around all day and you may find 5 or 6 patches of them. And then you go 3 or 4 weeks and not find another lion's mane. But it's funny how that works. But they seem to just appear when you're least expecting it.
What do you do when you find a lion's mane that's 25 feet up the tree?
Oh, gosh. Throw a rock at it.
Try to knock it down. I feel like I've seen
Need to get
a couple, and half of them are up high.
Yeah, they usually are. And usually I just take a picture of it and say, okay, that counts as finding it.
What's morel days for y'all?
Around here, where we find them, is usually on the very, very best well-drained bottom ground you can find. Oftentimes on a very slight rise down in the bottom. Your best soils, best drainage, and frequently for me, that's a sycamore site. You see a lot of sycamores. And then about mid-February to the 1st of April, depending on if it's an early or late spring. And what I've also found is if you run a fire through it, it can stimulate a whole bunch of them to come up. So
I ran a fire through my property last year.
It's not very typical to burn in a creek bottom.
Yeah.
But if it gets dry enough in the late winter and you can get a fire through there, and you're not worried about scarring some of your, favorite trees. I've got one spot that I do that, and it always has a better crop when you can burn it.
Yeah. Uncle Dud, do you know what partridge pea is?
I sure do.
So,
and as you said that, somebody just ran into my wall with a forklift and a picture fell off my wall. So I got a little distracted.
I was wondering what that was. Oh, man. Y'all are doing
partridge
some work.
pea, that was one of, I've always been a tree guy, but that was one of the first, shrubby weeds that I learned about, studying about quail and things like that.
I got a bunch of them on my property, and let me just tell you, when a fire hits 4 to 6 foot partridge pea, it does not stop. I accidentally lit my my pasture on fire last year, and you can't even hardly tell that I did it now, but because that stuff grew back so fast. But for me, the reason I'm mentioning this is because fire is a scary thing for a lot of people, and I know that lots of land managers. I know pretty much anybody that I know or respect what they have to say about land management, they like fire. But a lot of people can't afford big chunks of property, and if you have 20 acres, it's kind of scary to light a fire sometimes, I know in the woods it burns a little slower, but you see like the Heartland Bowhunter guys every year, they're burning some massive patch of, blue stem and stuff, and it's like, man, that's kind of scary. I know the conditions, you can play the conditions right and everything like that. But, to me, that kind of makes sense for somebody who is a professional, right? But, for somebody who's just like, man, I got weekends. And if there's not a Saturday where, the conditions are perfect, then I can't burn this year. So, I mean, do you feel like what I'm saying kind of resonates a little bit?
I think it's important to be scared of, because of you think about the worst case scenario, and if you are talking about areas where there's a lot of 20s and 40s and 80s, possibly houses, gosh, that's a lot different than having 800 acres off to the side that's got a neighbor that's got 300. Maybe one cabin on it, lots of roads and creeks and lanes in between. But if you are able to, say you do have 20 or 30 acres and you're able to surround a 2 or 3 acre spot with a really nice lane, and then you know that there's a road on the other side of that. And you do your homework, you take the class, you get certified. It's something that once you've done it, it gets easier every time. But you always have to be scared of it. Mm-hmm. It's smart too. But,
let me just ask you this real quick.
There's other options. You can always do some kind of disturbance. You can run a disc through it, or mow it real close to the ground. There's different things you can do to simulate a fire.
Yeah.
If you don't want to do it.
That's kind of where I was going.
That partridge piece sure does come up good when you run a fire through it.
Yeah, it did. I mean,
but there's a lot of things. You can use different types of herbicides to set back succession or to manage for, either get rid of your broadleaves, your grasses, and in different areas. But dropping a disc, dragging a harrow through there, anything you can do to make a disturbance and have differing types of cover on your place.
Gotcha.
It's just going to add to the diversity.
Yeah, makes sense. That to me, those are things that are way more approachable. And I was kind of going to go with what is. I know there are things that fire can do, that disking doesn't do, but the risk versus the reward for some people versus doing something like you said, running a disc over it or something like that, to me just seems like a way better option. Not to mention, like my grass here is tall enough to hide deer pretty well, and I feel like every year it's going to get a little bit better, and I'm going to have some small oaks and stuff that come up, and I think it's going to, turn into bedding at some point in the next few years, maybe a little bit more than just like pass through cover. And so for me, I kind of am a little bit like not against it, but I don't know if I want to burn, at least on purpose. So I kind of think about like, I'm trying to like project like what this stuff will look like in a few years, because I know like what KC's property looks like. How long has that property been?
It's been fallow since 2012.
So 10 years.
Yeah.
And he's got, it's probably a little overdue for something, right? Like some of those trees are pretty big, but there's
I go through and selective remove
bigger trees.
Because, I've got loblolly pines and sandy soil, so those things they're like super invasive when it comes to that. They're just in 1 year. I mean, there's so many new ones.
Yeah, they can take hold and jump quick.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah,
but you got plums.
I think a lot of that depends on the quality of the site, or the site index, how fast things grow in a particular area, or so there's places in the South that you clear cut some hardwoods and they'll be 8 foot tall ragweed before June the next year.
Give it to
before
me.
July.
Yeah,
sounds like a sneeze
and then there's
fest.
some areas you may leave fallow, and it may take 7 or 8 years to get thick enough. If you're focusing on deer cover, it may take 7 or 8 years before it gets thick enough to be, what you would refer to as high quality cover.
Is that
so you just have to take each area, each site, and make your decisions based on, what you're seeing.
Yeah, but let me go back.
I think
you up
a lot
little
of people
bit.
will run a fire. Folks will, just because they have native grasses, think they have to run a fire through it every year.
Yeah.
And that's just not true.
I'm going to back you up a little bit. A while ago, you said take the class and get certified. Can you kind of tell me what that is?
Okay, well, it's going to vary from state to state, and that's something else important to mention is different states have different rules about fire and prescribed burning or anything you can do on your land. Some states are more sensitive about disturbing wetland areas than others, things like that.
Not big on private property rights, I see, that the states aren't.
No, but, here in Mississippi, I can go to Mississippi State and take a certified burn manager course.
Yeah.
And they also offer short courses because, everybody can't, go for a whole month in the summer and do a semester. They'll have like a couple of long weekends or something like that where you can go to, maybe 3 different towns in the state, and they'll offer a short course on prescribed fire and how to do it safely and effectively and legally. And if you take the course and pass, you're what's called I believe it's called a certified burn manager in Mississippi. And if you follow the protocol, you call on the day of the burn, submit your plan, which you have to put a legal description, the area you're going to burn, whether you're doing this for wildlife habitat or forestry, those kinds of things. And then they say, okay, you can go burn today. Then if something crazy were to happen, it lessens your liability.
Mm-hmm. I got you. Can they not just, Google knows everything about us, so can they not just reference Google, and know our plans at that point? Why do we have to submit that,
Well, they know everything about what we're doing anyway.
That's right. Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, a while ago you said what fire does versus disking and stuff like that. So from what I understand, fire, when you burn, it does do some things because it's very harsh transition, right? But you do actually lose some nitrogen when you burn, and nitrogen helps things grow taller, right? It's when you're talking about NPKs, nitrogen is what helps things grow. So in some situations, would disking actually be a better thing because you kind of keep some of that organic matter there?
Yeah, so I was reading about that the other day. I believe the nitrogen and maybe the sulfur burns and kind of volatilizes and goes up into the air. Mm-hmm. But it does, release more phosphate and potash, and then there's a slight liming factor to the ash. But yeah, you're turning green stuff under. That's nitrogen. You're turning carbon and nitrogen back into the soil when you disc it under. So I think there's pros and cons to both, and both is good. If you can't do both, do one or the other.
Let me ask you this:
and, just find other ways to make disturbances. But some things fire, to make a seed coat to where that partridge peel sprout more easily. It may need a little bit of fire.
I was wondering that if they like scarification, if that was a thing for partridge peas.
So, that's another thing is that, some seeds may need freeze and thaw cycles or, just sitting there for a while, moisture and cold. Some may need that fire to get that seed, nick that seed coat and help it pop open.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you this: we have what I consider to be at least a pretty harsh climate in the summertime, and we have a lot of humidity from the Gulf. I imagine it's pretty similar to where you guys are at. I have recently had a feller suggest using clover as a food source in some of my food plots and using a cover crop to help shade it, such as some kind of a wheat. Have you ever heard of something like that?
Yeah. A lot of folks will plant some type of cereal grain with their clover to help it establish. And so the theory is that the wheat or oats or cereal rye pops up. Deer can nibble on that for a while, and they tend to not hit on the clover. It's a wheat oats a little bit taller, so the clover gets not necessarily avoided, but it provides a food source while the clover can establish. I would assume there's probably some kind of symbiotic relationship there that's over my head too.
Yeah.
Where, the roots and the grass versus the clover are helping each other in some way as well.
Yeah.
My understanding is, cereal rye doesn't tiller, so it doesn't have those smaller leaves that come out of the base, so there's more sunlight that can hit the clover if you use winter rye instead of wheat. I've had it work with all the different cereal grains.
Yeah, I think what he was trying to suggest is that the wheat would potentially burn up in the summertime, but create shade for the clover. And,
okay, yeah.
So, because that's what we get. That's what we run into here is in July and August, man, things just burn up, and it don't matter if it's a tomato plant or whatever, it's going to get smoked. So,
yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
And a good way to relate that is at the nursery, we use what's called shade cloth. So we have these hoop house looking things. And, we'll start stuff in a greenhouse, but we move it outside, and it blocks, 20% or so of the sunlight. It lets a lot of sun in, but it simulates what you're talking about. So you have that stalk that's making like dappled sunlight on top of the clover.
Yeah.
And it probably helps trap a little bit of coolness from the soil trying to evaporate, and then you're shading the ground, so maybe slowing a little bit of the evaporation. So that makes total sense.
Yeah, I'm interested in trying it for sure. I don't have a tractor, but my dad has one. But borrowing things are always a hassle. It seems like big things. So
I've got a tractor, but I've been doing this throw and mow stuff a lot lately.
So you're just throwing and mowing over the top of it?
Yep. And again, I said mow, so that means I have to use my tractor. I guess you wouldn't have to use a tractor.
I got a buddy that has a lawnmower.
I've also pulled like a four-wheeler style cultipacker. So I spray to kill what's there, come back a few weeks later, throw my seed and fertilizer out, and then you can either come back and mow it or drag it with something to lay the tall dead stuff over the top of your seed, and it kind of acts like a thatch layer for your clover and seal grains and brassicas or whatever you're planting to pop up through that thatch layer, and it kind of traps the moisture trying to evaporate out of the surface and directs it to your new plant that's popping up. And I've had a lot of success with that. I'm about 7 years in on that, on about a third of the food plots at my farm.
What time of year are you doing that?
I mainly do this with my brassicas that I'm planting in September, but I've also had some luck with it later on in the fall, planting, like blends. And I know folks that have done it with, spring and summer crops like beans and peas and sorghum and things like that.
Yeah. So that pretty much you're kind of given a potting mix type effect for the seed to germinate in, and then that taproot will just reach down there and get into real soil.
Exactly. It when you rake some of that dead grass back, it looks real duffy. It kind of looks like compost.
Yeah.
Just from grasses and things decomposing, and they're just barely on the surface. And when you mow, it throws some of that dead grass on top of the seed. It works really well. I've been impressed with it.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool method. Tyler and I both are kind of newer to property management. Kind of bought us a couple places. We've talked about it in the past, and small properties or whatever. And I think that a thing that people tend to do in that situation, and I'm definitely one of them. I've been through this. Is you get a new place and you're like, man, I want to put some oak trees on this thing and make some acorns and this kind of deal, and that's good, I think. But instead, we probably should be asking, what is my property? What's the limitations of my property? What does it need? What do you usually see whenever a person calls you and they say, "Hey, Dud, I want to improve my property." Like what should I start doing?
Well, one thing you really need to look at, particularly if it's a smaller property, is what are my neighbors doing? What kind of habitat do I have nearby? Is this a neighbor that's going to have similar management styles, or are we going to jive or not? So if there's a 2-year-old cutover on my west border, I'm probably not going to try to make a whole bunch of cover on my west border. But if it's just a mowed Bermuda field on my east border across the line that's not really going to hold anything, I may want to make some cover over there. So it's important to, look at the big picture before you look at the small picture, I think. And, make some hard decisions. Am I going to really be able to hold a bunch of deer here, or am I going to rely on my neighbor who I'm buddies with that's holding deer here? And we kind of have the same goals. And then you just go from there.
Mm-hmm.
Try to manage your expectations. I know folks that shoot 160-inch deer on 40-acre tracts because they're in cahoots with their neighbors and that kind of thing, and it's just naturally a good property anyway for deer to travel through. And I've seen 400-acre properties that they have trouble, even finding a mature buck, but their neighbors on the 40 next door have great luck. It's funny how that works, but just sitting back and thinking about it. Don't try to don't come up with an idea and turn your property into a dream place in 1 year. I hope folks come up with a 5 or 6 year plan to implement. That way, if you do start and need to backpedal a little bit, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I'd say one of the things that I learned from purchasing a small property, kind of the hard way, was instead of going in there right away and trying to change things and make it, the perfect deer hunting property for your situation, it's been good to sit back a few years and see how the deer kind of naturally use the place, and then make adaptations according to that. Because it seems like to me, especially on the small property, deer aren't that willing to just change what they do because of something you do, because you have all these extra factors outside of your property that, are also working against you or for you, depending on how you set yourself up. So for me,
correct,
that observation has kind of really changed my outlook on some stuff and kind of helped me see what my property actually needs. Kind of get this whole deer manager mindset where we're just going to go in and conquer, the property and make it do what we want it to. And that's pretty tough to do. God didn't make things to where we could just go in there and just make it our own very easy. Instead, it's a whole lot more functional to go in and just kind of, the Bible says have dominion, right? Well, we know that kings who practice some really bad dominion don't get to last very long, right? But if you go in and just kind of alter and kind of help cultivate, then it can really be prosperous for you.
Exactly. And then, we also, things change over time. So one area that may be great may not be. And it may be outside of the property line and a little bit out of your control. I had this spot at my family land that I've always been wanting to move the shooting house to the other side of the field, because we always hunted in the afternoons. There's a little creek that runs parallel, and I wanted to be able to walk my property line and climb in my shooting house where this creek would, suck all the scent out of the field. And I, figured I could get in there undetected. And we finally got some forks and a tractor with a bucket down there and moved the stand. And, we took the pressure off. I went in there for the first time to hunt it last year. And, boy, if I didn't just scare every deer out walking in. They had, so I had obsessed over this idea for 5 or 6 years. And then after we implemented it, realized I was completely wrong, that all the deer were bedding right near where I decided to enter from. And so, but things change. And I've been going to that place since I was a kid in the early 80s. And I'm still learning things about how, the wildlife moves and how it changes. You would have think I would have it dialed in by now, but it's far from dialed in.
Well, that's what's fun about it, right? For me, like a question that comes to my mind with all of this, what we're talking about right now, is if somebody comes to you and they're like, Stud, I've got 2,000 acres here. that I can do anything with. What is I know you're still at the mercy a little bit of neighbors, but, you do have this idea in 2,000 acres that there are probably deer that are going to live, nearly 100% of the time on your property. So
Sure.
How do you, what's the best ratio of food to cover typically that you see?
What based on all the pubs we've read over the past, like these publications that our PhD deer hunting nerd buddies have written.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them say 1 to 5% of a property should be in wildlife openings, and I think that's changed. It really depends on the area and the property and what stage of succession the habitat is in. But I would like to think, and again, I think we're focusing on deer here, but I would like to think that I would want, instead of having like this huge area of cover in the middle, which still may be cool to have, but have several areas. I'm not a deer biologist, but I think we've all read and learned, and I feel like deer can get pretty hierarchical, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. And sometimes if you have one big area, you may have a couple of dominant does or a couple bucks that don't let the other ones in. So I would like to think on a property like that, you could break it into chunks and try to have different areas of really good cover. And then, think about how you're going to get in there and out. Pressure is a really big deal to me.
Yeah.
And so focusing on, not over hunting it. If you are, maybe you've got some spots on the perimeter that you can focus on using if you just have to go hunting. But have a lot of cover. I think that's very important, but have it well defined. There's a lot of places in the South that are nothing but cover. And it's really hard to figure out what the deer are doing. But then you can look at the terrain and I hear the phrase map scout a lot. And so you can map scout a place. And a lot of times you can figure out the movement patterns. And then you combine that with what kind of, where the thick cover is and where you think they're bedding and where they're going to be going to eat. But, in the South, a lot of cover is food too. Mm-hmm. And so it makes it really difficult.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about that a little bit. Maybe you can name some of the, species of cover / food. I mean, I know obviously you guys sell, plums, Chickasaw plums and stuff like that. That would count. But let's talk about other things like greenbrier and, whatever else you've seen.
Yeah, when are you going to put a greenbrier skew at native nurseries? Come on.
I know. We've thought about it. You can just grow it and let it vine out, and all of them would braid together, and then you could probably cut it back to a 6 or 8 inch stem.
Yeah.
Once it's gone dormant, and we thought about growing muscadines like that.
That'd be cool.
But, that whole genus, Smilax, aka the greenbriers, is a big genus, and I would say it's up there with, as the most important plants for deer. You can find it. It's, some of the species are very shade tolerant. So it's an important species, especially on public land where you have a lot of closed canopy forests. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes that's the only food source. Another favorite genus is rubus. All the blackberries and raspberries, some of them are viney, some of them are more bushy. And so you can have more vertical cover with certain species. So it's like cover that they can eat. Go further north, dogwoods get really important. There's a bunch of different kinds of dogwoods. Here in the South, we have flowering dogwood. We've got rough leaf dogwood, swamp dogwood. We've got some silky dogwood, and then you go further north. There's some more species to get into. But usually, if it's going to be something they can eat and it's going to be cover, more often than not, it's a broadleaf and not a grass.
Yeah. Would you like, as a land manager, would you try to separate you can see that this mutually, or it's a double benefit to a deer to have food and cover, but does that hurt you from a hunting perspective?
I think it can.
Yeah.
And this is where we're just getting to really goobing out on deer hunting theory here. You can make a property so good for wildlife that you can make it difficult to hunt.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tough. You've got to figure out how to create little funnels and find all the saddles on your property, and maybe it's put up a section of barbed wire fence that you're just putting there on purpose and cutting a hole in it,
mm-hmm.
forcing them to. They do like the path of least resistance.
Mm-hmm.
Go in there with a backpack sprayer and walk backwards through a bunch of that thick stuff and make a trail through it.
I was a defensive back, so I can do that.
Exactly.
I was a tiny linebacker, so I was also used to going backwards just because guys would push me.
Putting you on skates.
Yeah. Put on those briar pants and get to work.
Yeah.
You put them on backwards?
Put them on backwards.
Yep.
Crisscrossing.
That's right. They go with the briar-proof stuff on the backside, right?
Strategically cut a tree down that they have to walk around. Just things like that.
I'm going to do some of that pretty soon. Mm-hmm. I've got a pretty densely grown area of, it's intermittent, but there's quite a bit of eastern red cedar in there and some bigger trees. And it backs up to, what you'd know as a pond, kind of back in the woods. And I think I'm going to go in there and cut down almost all of that red cedar and make sure I cut it all to where it runs one direction. That way the deer can use that area as bedding, but it's not easily traversed, and it's going to force, I'm hoping, cruising bucks kind of out into a more huntable area because they won't go through it, they'll go around it.
Yeah.
So I think it'll work, but I don't know. Some land managers like to rage on cedar trees. And what do you think about that?
I think, 200 or 300 years ago when fire was running through the area
mm-hmm.
frequently, you didn't have nearly as many red cedars. So let's, think about Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma. There's areas where there's just cedars for days.
Mm-hmm.
Around here, we have what's called a blackland prairie, which is darker soils, more alkaline soils. So we tend to have a lot of cedars, but used to it was all grasslands that fire ran through. And cedars hate fire.
Mm-hmm.
And so they tend to encroach when there's a lack of fire. It's great cover. You just I don't think you want it everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really the greatest food in the world. Deer will eat it if they're just starving. But
sounds terrible.
You can look at aerial maps of places in, like Texas and Kansas and, back to the 60s or sooner than that. And you see the progression of there being more and more juniper, cedars, moving in.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, it's not necessarily bad or good, but, it's a human, the more fences we've put up, the more cows and the more Smokey the Bear that's been around, the more cedars we have. So, I think you can use that to your advantage, like you're saying, cut them down in a line and try to direct traffic. But personally, I'd rather have more grasses and broadleaf weeds than cedars.
Yeah.
But have a few cedars for some thermal cover and have some islands and pockets of them. Sure.
Mm-hmm. So do you? Let me ask you this. I did cut some cedars last year, or maybe it was the year before. I think it was the spring before. I think when I first bought the property, I believe I cut some cedars, And I didn't go in there this fall, and went back in there just the other day. And I don't know what the grass is that's in there, but it is not good stuff. Like, it grows about 18 inches tall at the most. It's real wispy, and I've never seen any browse on it. And we've seen it around here. You know, it's something I know I've seen before. I just don't know what it is.
Is it swamp oats?
Yeah, it might be. No, it's not. Or it's thinner than that. But
can it be Kentucky bluegrass?
It's similar.
Is that a thing that could be, Dudley?
If it's green, it could be this time of year.
Well, no, it was dead this time of year. But
And it could just be a younger stage of a native grass that's not reached its potential.
Yeah.
At least that's what you would hope.
Well,
that
maybe
it's some kind of taller native.
It's like I've got kind of intermittent oaks and elms and stuff in there, so it's still like I'm getting, I guess, probably quite a bit of shade in there. And I guess my thought for you, or my question for you, is when it comes to managing a timber stand, if you start to cut stuff down and you're not getting anything coming up that's, you know, ideal in your mind, or, you know, from a wildlife beneficial standpoint, is there something else you can do to promote that, you know, more native grasses or broadleafs, like you said, goldenrod, whatever else it might be that you would want to get in there?
You know, just some things that come to mind. You could always put some fertilizer in a shoulder spreader and walk through there and try to encourage stuff to grow taller. You could you could do some selective herbicide treatments that will release, you know, some type of beneficial weed or grass, but suppress or control stuff that you don't want. I was thinking of another management tool, you know, like a mechanical management tool. You can rent a forestry mulcher. I've seen this cool practice with the cedars that I was going to mention earlier, where you get these two bulldozers and hang this huge chain between the two, and you just go through that area and it knocks all your cedars down. But still, you know, it may not be productive enough to get something tall and thick back. But, you know, by killing those cedars, you're saving moisture. So maybe just give it some more time.
Yeah.
Maybe go through there with a little bit of fertilizer and try to push things along and get them thickened up. Yeah. You know, maybe it just needs a little bit of time.
Yeah, I feel like that's one thing. I do kind of also wonder if, you know, I did take the cedars out, but there's still like a pretty good canopy that is not, like, I feel like if it was, because it's literally 40 yards from my open part of my property that has, you know, blue stem that's up to 4 foot tall and partridge pea that's up to 6 foot tall, and like it looks real good, you know, and it's prosperous, and the stuff in the woods 40 yards is not. And I was just, you know, maybe I need to go in there and cut some elms or something like that. But I definitely the fertilizer thing is something that I think could really help too, because I feel like that there, you know, I don't know, but I feel like that ground in there has probably been pretty leached, you know.
Yeah, and then, you know, Marcus Lashley from the University of Florida, he's published some research on these mineral stumps, he calls them. And I know elm works really well with his method, where you go in with your chainsaw, cut it off at, you know, ground level or a foot or two off the ground, and then it resprouts. And so, you know, if you're talking about an elm that's, I don't know, 3 to 12 inches in diameter or more, it has a huge root system. And when you cut that thing off at the ground, it's going to send up a whole bunch of new shoots, you know, to try to recuperate what it lost. But since it has such a big root system, all the minerals from that big tree are going to be in the foliage of just those brand new shoots. And so it's way more attractive and nutritious for a deer than, say, an elm seedling right next to it.
Yeah.
And so that's a really good technique. it's kind of a new finding of Marcus. But there's a lot of science and data behind it, and that's something cool that folks can do to improve the cover and the food value of an area.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the trees that you guys sell and how to implement those on a property. I guess first of all, this is kind of my chief interest, so we'll just start here. But plums, they, especially like a Chickasaw, sand plum, something like that. They're going to be fairly small, even when they're kind of maxed out, and they're going to need, I would assume, lots of sunlight, and they probably need a sandy soil. And so how do you go about when you get a shipment of, Chickasaw plums in the mail? How do you get them to establish?
Okay. Well, in your area, the best time to plant, in my opinion, is in the dead of winter. So that's probably around mid-December through mid-February. And that's a good time to get them in the ground, in my opinion, sooner than later, so they can have time to root in over the course of the winter. But something like plum, there used to be a lot more of them. We've been talking about fire and disturbances. So back when there was a lot more fire, there was a lot fewer taller trees, and trees were spaced further apart. So species like Chickasaw plum could take off. That was ideal for them. They like that sunlight. They don't like all that tall competition. But your area is probably perfect for that. It's probably get a little bit less rainfall than I get in Mississippi. Trees don't get quite as tall. There's areas where soils are slightly poorer, and you may not have as much competition. That's a perfect site for Chickasaw plum. Like you said, sandier soils, more drainage. You don't typically find them down in wet bottoms. Gosh, they're good for deer, rabbits, all kinds of stuff, quail. And they're a good browse plant. They're a good insect host.
How do you plant them?
Stuff like it.
Do you just stick them in the ground?
I usually just plant. Yeah, you do. You can dig a fancy hole. If you've got heavy clays, you may have to spend a lot of time preparing a proper hole and chopping that soil up. If you've got a sandy loam, a lot of times you can just pry it open. I often use what's called a sharpshooter, which is a long, narrow shovel. And you step on that thing and lean back and crack the soil open. Usually you can get it about 8 or 10 inches deep and then lean backwards. And that often pops open that hard layer that can often be about 8 to 12 inches deep, called the hard pan. And then you just hold the seedling in that crack and then seal the soil shut with your feet, or get down on your hands and knees and put the soil around it. And then once you've packed the soil around the roots, I'd often put a cage or a tree tube around it to keep deer from rubbing their antlers on it, trying to keep them from eating it until it gets established.
What about hogs? You ever worry about those?
Hogs are no fun.
I feel like anytime you crack the soil open.
Hogs and black bears. I'd say black bears are worse. But oftentimes if you use a tree tube, the hog will try to dig, and they'll just barely miss that seedling because it's right underneath that tree tube. And oftentimes they'll run into that cage, but it's like they can smell the fertilizer salts or something attracts them to it, and they'll dig around it. But in areas that are like really hoggy, I've seen where folks get like welded wire fencing, particularly the stuff that is roughly the cross section of a 2x4. Does that make sense? The little rectangles of the wire. I'll cut a square of that out and then just cut a little bitty circle in there and slide that over the tube. And so that way when they're trying to paw it up, they can't. And it's just laying flat on the ground, and you can reuse them. So once your tree is a year or two old and you're not as worried about them rooting around your tree, you can slide it up and put it on another one.
A problem I had with tree tubes when it came to pigs is they would come along and try to, rub lice off or, mud or whatever on the tube itself and then spin that thing around, and it would mess up the seedling because of the pigs. So a couple of them I'd like double staked or something because of that.
They are no fun.
Yeah,
what they do have is an incredible nose, and they hate the smell of humans. They can't stand it. So, my boss, Toxie, he goes to the barber shop, and they save him like garbage bags full of hair.
That's nasty.
And he'll put a little, it's kind of gross, but he'll put a wad of human hair inside each tree tube.
Oh, he's smart, man. That's cool.
Like even around feeders, if you're where legal and, whatever time of year you're allowed to feed turkeys, you can put hair on the ground around the turkey feeder and it'll keep the pigs away. It'll also keep deer away, which isn't necessarily good, but,
in spring,
so
it is what it is.
The hair trick or, spray some of that deer away stuff in and around them seems to help. But, pigs are no fun.
They are.
So whenever a person is approaching their property, and they're thinking about maybe using something that y'all have, I think about visual seclusion a lot. And, making sure that, for one instance, I have one side of my property that the neighbor's house just butts right up to the place, and she runs her 4x4, side by side or whatever around over there, and it's kind of weird. How much thought do you think that person should put into trying to make that border really visually secure, or should you focus just on improving the overall habitat and cover on the property and let that take care of itself?
Well, I think you could go either way with that. I also think in time, especially in areas that are rural, but they're becoming more and more dotted with houses and smaller properties with houses on them, with people that are working in their yard, mowing or like you say, riding their side by side. They'll go get the mail and then just do the loop around their whole place.
Yep.
Sometimes I feel like, and we all know that there's that public land spot that's close to the road that everybody avoids, but then you drive by on the highway at night and there's all these deer feeding on the highway. They didn't walk far. They were just right on the road. Sometimes I feel like deer almost use that as a backing, and they'll bed down up against that because they know those folks are relatively safe there. It's almost like their strategy. But if you could put a wall of cover up against that and then not really go near it, that could be, like a new bedding area. It's almost like a deer bedding up against the cover of a lake.
Yeah.
Or a river.
Yeah.
If it's a local deer that gets used to the local traffic, you can almost use that strategically. But I do like the thought of having something really thick or having a visual barrier.
I think sound there is another issue too. That's people out messing around doing stuff. I just kind of wish that you could have something that was fairly thick to help with that. And that's kind of where I've thought about improving and adding either Chickasaw plums or, maybe on a short term, some of those loblolly pine. You know how thick they can get, when those...
Loblollies.
Yeah.
And, you've got your indigenous evergreen conifer, eastern red cedar. They may grow a little slow, but... boy, can they block a view.
Yeah, you ain't lying about that.
I've heard of folks just putting up like one strand of fencing and letting birds plant stuff on the fence row and coming up really thick.
Yeah, and to add to that, I thought about building like a 2-foot berm over there, like just right there on the fence line, kind of how fence lines used to be. You probably remember it, but used to, like where the fence was, it kind of ended up being a higher spot a lot of times. And
right. Well, there was always stuff growing on it, and it would erode on either side of it.
Exactly. And then you end up with stuff that grows to 4 foot, but you have 6 foot of cover because it's kind of up on that hill a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and probably more productive because you've got a bit of a raised bed.
yeah, yeah, warmer soil temps.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's your favorite oak tree right now, Stud?
Woo! My favorite oak tree, and I like the way you said right now because it changes all the time.
Yeah.
I've been turned on lately to these red oaks that aren't quite as popular, but these white oaks that everybody wants to plant that deer love to eat. A lot of them drop at the same time during that peak drop time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's late season right now for me. Most places deer season's closed, but more and more you're finding more and more about these late, not necessarily late dropping, but red oaks like scarlet oak and black oak, not often thought of as a top priority acorn, but they sit there on the ground until the end of deer season, and then that's the only game in town.
Mm-hmm.
So scarlet oak, black oak, but you said my favorite, I have to go with the shoe-marred oak.
All right.
It's hard to beat, man. I'm a fan.
It'll grow on a bottom site. It'll grow on an upland site. It can handle alkaline soils, acidic soils. It's great for timber on a good site. Some drop in October, some drop in November, some drop December through February. It's a red oak, so it's just hard to beat.
Big acorn.
Big acorns. It's about, if I'm planting on my personal farm, that's usually about 50% of the oaks I'm planting on my place. Yeah,
they're cool, man. And I had 2 of them, and there was a nursery locally that was going to move to a different town, and so they were trying to sell out all their trees, and we got a couple before I actually we were getting ready to move to this property, and I killed both of them because I couldn't get water to them enough in the summertime. And so I was sad because they were big, but I definitely want to get some more out here and get them established. The hardest part is, getting them in the time of year that you would like to get them in, because once
that's the busiest time of your year too.
That's right. Yeah. So we're doing the other things, and I guess we just need to hire employees or something.
So the cousin of the shoe-marred is the Nuttall, and supposedly it's a later dropper. What do you think?
It's even later.
Yeah.
The Nuttall is another favorite. In fact, it drops even later. It can be a little bit more finicky about where it's going to grow. Mm-hmm. It's a bottomland species, and where it competes best is in areas that are too wet for a lot of other oaks. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily grow the fastest on a really poorly drained soil. That's just where it competes the best. Mm-hmm. But you put it on some well-drained bottom ground, it'll grow like a weed. And it's pretty much a sure thing. It's not even going to start dropping good until probably mid-December.
Yeah.
And it'll have acorns on it into February and March.
So it'll drop all its leaves and still have acorns on there.
Yeah, I think that those acorns are mature and ready to fall. I think the cup somewhat holds on to them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And so you have cold spells and freeze and thaw and windstorms, and that's what knocks them out.
Yeah.
But if you were able to reach the acorn and twist it, it'll come right out in early December. So they're right. They're just getting hung up in there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty cool, man. Oaks are they're pretty neat, and those two there we're talking about. One of the nice things about them too is they're just they're pretty trees. You know, they have good growth patterns. They turn good colors in the fall. You know, they're just nice, aesthetically pleasing,
and they're also good for more than just deer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're a turkey guy or you like looking at songbirds while you're deer hunting or whatever, oaks house more insects than pretty much any other genus species out there.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, moth larvae and stuff like that. And it's all important. The older I get, the more I realize how managing for the big picture is more important than just focusing on one species.
Oh, absolutely. It's cool. I mean, if we just wanted to focus on just deer, you can go out there and till you up a spot and leave 40 acres of standing corn and till you up a spot next to it with 40 acres of winter wheat, and you'd have deer, you know. But it's a monoculture, so it just doesn't work, you know. When you're thinking about that kind of stuff, what if you walk on a new property, you know, in biology, indicator species are a thing out there, right? So, like for us, the thing, when I see a box tortoise, I'm like, you know what, that's cool, you know. Do you have anything that kind of tips you off to be like, you know what, this place is a pretty good spot when it comes to, like, you know, maybe you're not seeing a deer, but you see something and you say, this is a pretty healthy area?
You know, looking at, you know, I'm a soil nut, so oftentimes you can find something that you think everything's growing faster, the weeds are taller, everything's greener. You know, that may be a spot to come back to, especially on public. You know, you may have some kind of weed growing there that they're going to be munching on when everything else is dead, especially like really early season when it's really dry. Mm-hmm. That might be a source you can hone in on. But there's also a lot of indicators that there aren't many deer. You know, you start seeing a bunch of strawberry bush out in the wild. Well, there's not that many deer around there because it would be gone if they were. I'm always looking for persimmon trees, whether it's the deer season or not. That's just a show enough going to be a good spot. And if you can't see fruits in the tree, you can always look for the calyxes, which is a part of the flower, you know, the top of the fruit. They don't decompose very quickly, and you can often find those on the ground. But those are a couple of things to look for. And that's, you know, I'm always trying to ID the trees that I see. So that's usually what I'm looking at is sources of mast and, you know, sources of food. And then the first thing I'm going to do is get on my phone and look at my Onyx and see if there's some nearby cover or nearby water or some kind of terrain feature that's going to help direct traffic, things like that.
When you're thinking about persimmons, are you trying to really go through and find a hot tree, you know, like the one that's got a little bit different genetics that's going to drop in a better time of year?
Absolutely. There's so much variation with persimmons. A lot of them are famous for, it seems like they shed every single persimmon in our neck of the woods a week before the bow opener in October.
That's the persimmons on my property. They do that.
And it's like a hot spot. And then all of a sudden they're gone, and then there's not a deer within 300 yards of there. But if there's one that they like, it doesn't even have to have good cover. They'll find a spot that's relatively safe, and they'll hang out nearby and guard that tree. But
that's funny.
You know, if you can find one that's it's like they don't mature quickly enough, and they seem to, you know, hang onto the tree and drop sporadically, you know, usually like the months of October and November. That's a real winner. But then again, you also get the one that they never seem to mature. They almost just turn into raisins and stay on the tree and never fall off.
Uh-huh.
So it seems like there's a happy medium. And my theory on that is that the majority of your persimmons are supposed to drop, or mature and drop early. And you may have an outlier that's got some slightly more northern genetics, and it just takes it longer to mature. Or it could be slightly more southern genetics, and it matures even sooner. I'm not really sure exactly which way that goes, but I think that has something to do with it. It's just its maturity date is later.
I got you. I never really thought about it.
It causes them to drop more sporadically.
It's kind of like a long day versus short day onion kind of thing, almost, where it just...
Yeah.
Huh. That's neat. So technically, if a guy was into, changing his persimmon varieties around with some grafts, it wouldn't be the end of the world to holler at some of our neighbors from further up north to try to get some of their just native persimmon scions and add to some of your property down south, because you might end up with some more later dropping genetics because of that.
If they let you into their state.
That's it.
Yeah, or even go 50 or 60 miles north and try some of that. I mean, gosh, you guys are on the road more than anybody I know, so I hope you've got a set of pruners in your truck.
Now,
pull
that's
over
how
on the
Rainbow
side of the
Trout
road
ended
and
up in eastern U.S., man.
Yeah.
I will not
I've got
confirm or deny.
I've got a lot of my grandmother and me. It used to be common to just pull over on the side of the road and take a cutting out of somebody's yard. I think nowadays you might be shot, but it was almost encouraged back then.
Dude, we were going to look at a topper for a truck one time a couple years ago, and dude, we saw before we got to the dude's house, KC was like, "Oh my gosh, there's a huge fig tree right there in that person's yard." It was like kind of in their backyard, but their house was kind of sideways to the road, so it was kind of like one of those situations where you felt like you might could. It was kind of like far from their house too, so you didn't feel like you were like in their backyard necessarily. And on the way back by, man, we pulled a drive-by and ran and got... Did you get some cuttings?
I got the cuttings didn't make. I wasn't that good at growing from cuttings yet.
But we ate some figs off of it too.
Yeah, buddy.
They were so good.
I'm going to go back and get more of them. It was good. Yeah.
Yeah, I found a fig, right near our church the other 2 summers ago. And I've never seen figs that big in my life, but they split open when they ripen.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, maybe I can send you guys some of those.
Oh,
I wouldn't hate that at all.
Well, we're going to see you here in a couple of weeks. We might just have to bring a couple Igloo lunchbox coolers and do some just swapping, because we got some stuff to bring you. Tyler's got a persimmon tree that, I know you've got the access to some good varieties, but this thing is a late dropper, and it puts them off like crazy. So I've been trying to grab some of those and put on my property.
I'll bring you some of mine, too.
Yeah.
That'll be fun.
Ooh, I like swaps, man. so this kind of
everybody will be like, what is that? Is that a turkey striker? Is that a slate cow striker? What are y'all doing over there?
That's it.
Yeah.
We're just playing pickup sticks.
That's right.
Redneck Jenga.
Dadgummit, that's funny. Well, that's cool, man. Doug, let's talk about this a little bit. Just go ahead and give you an opportunity to, send people to, your method of making it, with Mossy Oak Native Nurseries and stuff. Maybe give people some ideas of if they're trying to maybe add some trees or other native forage to their property or cover, whatever it is. What are some things they need to be thinking about now and in prep, and when should they be, getting on the website and making those orders?
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate it.
Sure.
This is, I do work at a nursery, and that's what I do for a living. So I'd appreciate it if you guys could support that. Just like you need to support your buddies over at the Element.
Let's go.
So in the South, planting time is usually December through, mid-March, early April. And in the north, you need to have a split season. You know, you can't plant a tree when the ground is frozen solid. So typically in the north, I like to tell folks that when the trees are at full color and right when they start dropping good is a great time to fall plant. And in the north, you can pick back up in the spring just as soon as the ground thaws. But we usually put everything up for sale in September, and it starts going quick. But we can hold your trees for up to 6 weeks after you make an order. There's a little calendar on the checkout page where you just pick a ship date. So I encourage folks to try to get their order in the fall. And if you're up north and you want a spring plant, you can order, usually sometime in mid-December and get your trees delivered in early February while they're still dormant. And then you can just keep them dormant, like in your fridge, or maybe cover them in your garage, cold but not frozen. And then you can plant a dormant seedling as soon as the ground thaws. You don't have to wait until the spring and everything leafs out. Shipping a fully leafed out tree with tender spring leaves on it is not really the best way to go. Mm-hmm. So trying to time it where they're dormant is really safer for the tree itself, to be more successful. And it's safer to ship them that way too.
Yeah.
But that's how to do it. And, my email is dphelps@mossyoak.com. So first letter, last name at mossyoak.com. Feel free to give me an email and we can talk trees. I can help you figure out what to order and get you off to a good start. And we've also got a YouTube page with a bunch of instructional videos, how to store your trees, how to plant them, all that good stuff. That
stuff's real helpful. I actually watched a lot of that stuff, and, you on the channel you show people how to hill them in. I think there's a video of that of another way to kind of like get your seedlings but not plant them right away kind of thing, and a couple of good things on there. And
some of that stuff's getting a little bit dated, and we're working on updating a lot of that right now.
Yeah. Old Blake looks like he's in high school whenever y'all have some of those videos. So.
I know, isn't that hilarious?
But no, it's good stuff, man. And I think it would probably be remiss to not talk about a little bit about like kind of the system you have going there. You're not getting a big old tree that you would get like at a normal nursery. You're getting a 1-year-old sapling pretty much. But there's kind of a method to the madness of not buying a big old tree, right?
We think so, and that's a really good comment there. There's an old saying about, planting a 50-cent tree in a $5 hole, and, instead of planting a really big tree. But it rings true, and they're also very shippable, so it makes it convenient for everybody. But you can plant a small tree and baby it, and it seems like more often than not, those trees have a better chance of establishing properly. And oftentimes you can spend a lot of money on a bigger tree. It may be root bound, and they just don't seem to grow as well and grow quickly from day one as these smaller trees do. And we try to encourage them to have a really good root system so they can grow well the first year. And oftentimes bigger trees, you can plant them with good intentions, but oftentimes they do fine. But it seems like more often than not, they kind of sit there for a few years, if not forever.
Yeah.
So if you're willing to wait a couple more years, I think smaller trees are the way to go.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense, and it's pretty cost effective too. I mean, I think if I remember right, it's $3 for an average oak tree, right? So it's not.
Yeah, well, they're about $5 a piece, but by the time you get the seedling and the tree tube, I mean, think about it. Compare it to a bag of corn. That tree's going to be making free corn every year, just about,
buddy. Free acorn
till you're long gone. So try to put that into perspective when you think, well, by the time I've got the tree and the tube, this thing's roughly $10. Well, that $10 is not going to be $10 every single time. It's going to be $10 once.
Yep.
Yep. Pretty cool stuff, man. It's fun. Planting trees is fun, man. I think me and my family have kind of talked about kind of trying to have a tradition of planting trees on my kid's birthday, kind of like a, I don't know, memory kind of thing, where it's like, oh yeah, I planted that when I was 12 and look at that thing now, or whatever it might be. It's a neat thing to do, and you can feel like you're kind of helping to foster the wildlife as well within all of it. And it's a pretty cool thing that you get to do on a daily basis, man. Appreciate all the knowledge you have and all the experiences you can share and stuff. And thanks for spending time with us, man. I know that we kind of scattered just all kinds of questions on you today, but it's kind of fun to just sit here and just brainstorm and just kind of, talk, as opposed to having to, well, Dudley, tell me about, all the types of oaks in the world, or whatever, you know what I mean?
No, it's fun to shoot from the hip, and, we all have very similar interests, and, I just felt like we were sitting around I'm sounding corny here, but felt like we were sitting around the fire just having a normal conversation. But
that's right, man. We'll have to bust out the campfire.
Our conversations are always going to turn towards this kind of thing. It's a lot of fun.
That's it. I was talking to a friend at church the other day. I was like, well, man, it's deer season is over. I don't know what we're going to talk about now. So, and then we started talking about next season. So it works, it's the way it goes, man. Well, we'll have to bust out the campfire a little bit more in Nashville in a couple of weeks. If you're listening right now and you're around the area, we'll all be at National Wild Turkey Federation convention. So y'all stop by and say hi. Y'all gonna have a booth there, or is it y'all just walking around hanging out?
We're having a booth.
Cool.
We hadn't done many trade shows since COVID, but we are fired up to get back to NWTF.
All right, man. Well, we'll see you there, and we'll get people to stop by and say howdy. Dudley, it's been a good day, man. Thanks for spending some time with us. Yeah,
y'all too. It's always good to hang out with y'all, even if it's on the phone. So look forward to seeing y'all in person soon.
I don't know if I solved any problems, but I feel better.
Yep. Because you put that Tupelo honey on
right, dude.
yourself.
Yeah, Dudley, dude, we've gotten to the point now where we just end up just being self-fulfilling with this stuff when we talk to Dudley, as opposed to be like, so what does the listener want to know? But that's all right, man, because, we're pretty normal dudes, I think, and so we encounter a lot of the same problems a lot of other people do, and we hunt the same way a lot of people do, especially Dudley. He's talking about, I don't remember if this is on air or off air, but he doesn't always have a ton of time to go hunting, but he tries to make the most of it, being a family man and doing all that stuff. But, one of the things that you can do when you don't have a ton of time to hunt is make sure that you are prepared when you do go. And here's the deal. You can either be a whitetail bum and not work and hunt a ton and barely have enough money to whittle your own cedar arrows, or you can buy something that is going to perform well and work good in any situation. And that's what Vector arrows are for us. We love our Vectors. I've shot the hammers a lot. Tyler shot the hammers and the Zimmers, or the ZMRs. I don't think they have a phonetical word, but killed a bunch with both of them. The ZMRs are going to launch pretty soon for the general public, so be ready for that. And then also just watch out for some of the sales and stuff that are coming up on the Vector website, because they're kind of clearing out of the 2021 inventory and going into 2022, which... Dadgummit. If you want to talk about some hype, Tyler Jones, there's some hype involved in 2022.
Let's go!
Woo! Okay.
Well, first of all, don't forget, if you're going to buy Vector arrows, you can use the Element code, which is Element.
That's right.
Is it all caps? Does it matter?
All caps.
Okay, all caps, Element, and that's a 10% off, so don't forget to use that. So, back to the Hype Fest. Well, actually, first, I wanted to also talk about this.
I like to get hype. Come on.
No, we're going to get hype. We're going to get hype. But
right.
you were talking to Dudley about Eastern Red Cedar, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of like a three words, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's actually 2 words.
Okay.
It's weird.
I'm looking at it over there. Red Cedar is 1 word.
Uh-huh.
What in the world is going on?
They just wanted to make that happen, so they did.
That's wild. Mm-hmm. Why would they do that?
I don't know.
Red Cedar.
Yeah.
Things
like that are dumb.
Yeah, that's real dumb.
It's like on to becomes 1 word, or a lot is 2 words instead of 1 word.
Or you can make it 1 word. It's
Well,
like nobody really knows.
Nobody knows. Yeah.
Nobody knows.
English is weird.
Yeah. It's kind of like how...
What about shagbark hickory? Same thing.
Yeah.
Like
cottonwood.
Cottonwood. Yeah. What are we doing here?
That's a tree thing, I guess.
In 50 years, is it just going to be Eastern Cottonwood, all 1 word?
It could be. Especially if you say it a bunch.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, that's true, Tyler. That's a good point.
I'd never seen a tulip tree until we went to Indiana last year.
You know, there is one in Emory, Texas.
How about that?
Yep. I did not know what it was. It looks like it's from space.
It's in the park?
No, it's over there on Old 69. Kind of, you drive past the bank.
Gotcha.
It's over there on the side of the road. Like, you know where that really expensive walking path that nobody uses is that goes down the side of the road? Yeah, right there.
Yeah. You know what? I almost hit a guy there one time crossing the road because he wasn't using the walking path.
Good.
Good. You think...
Almost. I'm saying the almost is the good part.
How do you think that was paid for?
I'm sure it was just out of the kindness of people's hearts.
It probably came out of some political leader's pocket.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I think they just found that money laying on the side of the road there and decided they'd just return it.
That's exactly
where
what
it's
happened.
supposed to be.
Yep, that's exactly what happened. The money blew over from Potts Feed Store. Anyway, Hype Fest. We've got a lot of cool things that are in the works this season. I told my wife yesterday, I said, we have been on the couch talking for 4 weeks straight, whether it's on the phone or with each other. And this has been the most intensive planning I've ever been a part of, I think, dude.
Really? Even albums and stuff?
I mean, I think so,
wow.
dude. I mean,
that's crazy.
Yeah. Like, first of all, I never really, probably really had enough time to sit around for 4 weeks straight and talk about an album. Because it's been like almost every day, you know, like during the week or whatever. So probably haven't just, probably, I mean, football, I guess.
But in football, you're really just getting told what to do.
Yep.
Is a lot more than you are like.
Just plan on executing the plan is what you're playing.
That's right.
Yeah. So, but we've got some really good stuff in the works right now. We've had some really exciting phone calls with different people this year that we're excited about as well.
There's going to be a big thing happen this fall. It's going to blow y'all's minds. That's all we're going to tell you. You might see the Element Boys doing some cool stuff.
Yeah, you might. Finally.
You probably already have.
Finally.
Yeah.
So, anyway, one thing that I'm really excited about is a potential hunt that I'm going to draw.
You going to burn some points, bro?
I'm going to burn some points. Yep, I'm going to burn some points, and I'm going to draw if everything goes like it should go, right? Now, the weird thing is I was supposed to draw an elk tag 2 years ago when COVID hit, and it jumped, like point creep happened like, it was like 2 or 3 points in 1 year or whatever where I was at least. Yeah. Yes. So that was one of those things where like I felt like I was going to draw and I didn't. So it could happen, but I think I'm technically like a point ahead of what I need minimum. So I'm pretty excited about that. It's one of those things where, like, when you put in for a hunt for so many years, it's almost like you feel really nervous because you're like, man, I hope I don't mess up a 10-year, 10-year journey that I've been on or whatever, you know? So that's kind of like one of those things where I'm excited, but I'm also really nervous because I may just go up there and mess things up. And I waited 10 years of my life for, just to be out of breath up a hill, pretty much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
It's going to be kind of cool. It's a different kind of hunt than what we've done. I mean, my Gila hunt was kind of like that, but we just didn't have any budget at all.
Yeah.
We literally were working off of our own funds when we were doing stuff back then, which we still, y'all know what we do, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've pushed to where we get to do this full time now. It's a huge blessing, but we have like the ability to actually make a hunt like this work.
Yeah.
And it's pretty exciting to be able to do that.
It is. It is.
I had that feeling on the Gila hunt, but not because I put in for it for so long, but it was just like I drew it a lot earlier than I thought I would. And I was like, well, this is it. Yeah. I'm never going to get to it again. So
that's how I felt when I kneeled up on that big buck in Kansas this year. I was like, this is it. It's like you either mess this up or you don't.
That's it, man. Isn't it weird? This is it. That's pretty good line, man. This is it.
We should make a t-shirt that we can sell like 3 of.
That's right.
But yeah, there's lots of plans going in, obviously, for whitetail deer this year, man, and all over the country potentially, and we are working on that. I'll tell you what, man, scheduling for this has been intense and really fun, but also like there's been a lot of focus involved.
What's wild is when everything's scheduled yet.
I know. Things are so dependent upon. Here's what happens, y'all. When we schedule stuff, at least in the past, and I think it's going to be this way this year as well, and maybe for the foreseeable future, we usually can schedule out from about, the beginning of the season till about October 30th. And from there, it is like haywire. And that's what we've told. Like, we've told any intern we've ever had, we've told them that, you know what I mean? And I still don't know if they knew what to expect or not, but that is the truth. Like, when November comes, who knows? Because when you tag out, you might be going somewhere else. Who knows? But I'll tell you this, it is a blast. And the support we have from you guys is why we get to do it, like K.C. mentioned. I really, really am thankful to you guys, indebted to you guys that we get to do this for sure. So
we will handle that responsibly, I promise.
Yeah, sure.
Believe me, we don't live lavish lives or do anything crazy or anything, but we do our best to hold ourselves accountable and give glory to God and make sure that we are not doing anything that don't make no sense, if you know what I'm saying. And
be in the way of a big old buck.
That's right.
That's what we're trying to make sure we do.
Yeah, that's right. Or at least 50 yards from in the way, right? Like you made that happen last year.
Yeah.
So, man, let's do it again.
We had some fun times this year, man.
We did, dude.
Good
November
stuff.
is too busy.
Yeah.
Like, it'd be kind of nice to not have to make it any busier than it was this year.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I don't know.
It was fun, man.
It was.
It was so much fun. Yeah, I just think about that. And I was thinking about this morning. I really missed that buck. He's over in your freezer.
You have to come see him.
Dadgummit, dude.
Where's the cape at?
It's in my freezer.
Okay.
Yeah, I got the cape.
That's good. You keep that.
Got the short end of the stick in this thing, man. Dadgummit.
Yeah. I've got a lot of bucks in my freezer right now. It's kind of wild. I need to get my Oklahoma Euro done.
Where's he at? In the freezer?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I ain't giving him to Hunter, that's for sure.
It'd be like a Brennan thing right there.
That's right.
Yeah.
Man, aren't those two guys the same?
Yeah. Well, so we're going to be doing some hog hunting coming up soon, and I think you guys probably saw one of the videos we did, but that's one thing that we're also excited about. So maybe there'll be some more video content from that if you guys are interested in watching videos of us slinging arrows at pigs. I know the shotguns thing has been pretty cool in the past. I don't know, to be honest with you, here in the podcast world, how much YouTube likes a shotgun. And so we may be doing more bow stuff this year, which is unfortunate because shotguns are really effective on pigs and really fun because you can run through the woods with a shotgun.
It's also real nice to just take 4 out at once.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
I know,
that's
dude.
a pretty cool thing.
It's like you work all day to get up in range of a sounder and you get to fling one arrow and hope that you find a hog that's about the toughest animal in Texas.
Yeah, exactly. So, in fact, we need to wrap this up, guys. Sorry, we're just kind of dragging on. But we went on a hog hunt the other day, and I stalked up on a boar and shot him at like 40 yards. That was a pretty decent hit with some decent blood, and he crossed fences, and we couldn't get him. It's like if I had my 3.5-inch double-aught buckshot, he would have been laying where he was standing.
Mm-hmm.
But
well,
at least the vector flew true, right?
That's right. It flew right where you aimed it.
That's right.
Yeah.
No, it's I love archery hunting, but there is something pretty satisfactory about just smoking one down.
I like it all, dude.
Yeah.
I can literally have fun doing just about anything
I haven't
outside.
shot a deer with a gun in a long time, man. I kind of want to do that again just to see if I'm like missing out. You know what I mean?
You're missing out for sure on something. There's something about we talk about this with turkeys. There's something about like when the sound of a gun going off, breaking the kind of quiet of the woods, and there just being something flopping there.
Yeah, just being over.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Put that high shoulder shot on a deer, and it's over pretty quick too.
Oh, with a gun.
Yeah.
I thought you were about to go the other direction.
Yeah.
Put the high shoulder shot on a deer with a bow, and you're like, I'm going to have a bad 24 hours.
That's the truth, man.
Yeah. Well, remember to keep y'all shots low with your archery equipment, and remember, this is your element.
Live in it.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.